You're watching CHCO-TV's gavel-to-gavel coverage of the February 3rd, 2025 regular council meeting for the town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Today's meeting begins with a public hearing of objections to Bylaw 25-02, regulating peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks. Council will later move to grant leave for the first reading of this bylaw. John Rocca will make a presentation to Council requesting encroachment at 260 Water Street, the location of the Argyle Residences complex currently under construction. Under Planning and Community Development, Councillors Harland and Heenan will move to appoint 9 members of the community to a Mental Wellness Committee for a 1-year term. Additionally, they will move to accept the resignation of Jeff Cross from the Planning Advisory Committee and to appoint 6 new members to the committee. Under Finance and Administration, Deputy Mayor Akaji will move that Council accepts the conclusion of the Code of Conduct investigative report of Jody Carr. Under Public Works and Public Safety, Councillors Bennett and Neal will move that Council awards 2 tenders for the purchase of a 3/4-ton pickup truck and a tandem plow and dump truck. Under Economic Development, Business and Culture, Councillors Hurdle and Weir will move that Council supports the request for funds by the St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce for town maps and the 2025 Business Gala for an amount to be determined drawn from the Tourism Accommodation Levy. Councillors Hurdle and Weir will also move to appoint Senior Planner Alexander Gopin as the Heritage Officer under the Heritage Conservation Bylaw. Additionally, they will move to appoint 7 members of the community to the Heritage Board. Under Recreation and Environment, Councillors Gumashell and Blanchard will move to accept the resignations of Louise McFarland and Sandy Morgan from the Age Friendly Advisory Committee and to appoint Shelley Hughes and Lisa Eldridge to the committee for a 2-year term. Finally, Councillors Gumashell and Blanchard will move to accept the resignation of Dr. David Johnson from the Trail Advisory Committee and to accept the appointment of Ann Mackay to the committee for a 2-year term. Now let's join Council at the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex Council Chambers in St. Andrews.
Call the meeting to order of the public hearing of objections on Monday, February the 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. Record of attendance, we note that, is he online, Mark? So,
Madam Chair, Mayor Henderson, Councillor Hurdle, and Councillor Blanchard are not present at this time.
okay, so all 3 of them are not present. Thank you. We are on the land, we welcome and we recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Beskotomakati people. Approval of the agenda. Could I have someone so move? Councillor Bennett and Councillor Heenan. This is the agenda for the public hearing 25-0203 public hearing of objections to bylaw number 25-02. Peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks for the town of St. Andrews be approved as presented. We have to vote for the acceptance of the agenda. So all those in favor? Aye. Contrary-minded? It's carried. Disclosure of anybody that has a conflict of interest. Welcome, Alex. Nice to have you. No, seeing none. Okay, we don't have a presentation. Oh, ask the clerk. Ask the clerk, would you please, I guess, tell us the information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight there's a public hearing of objections to bylaw 25-02. It's a bylaw to regulate peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks in the town of St. Andrews. This was posted out on the website for the last 14 days as well. Notice was sent out to the entire community on notices coming up with all the number of bylaws coming forward and public hearings of objection. At this time, we have received no email, no written correspondence, no verbal correspondence to this bylaw.
Thank you very much, Mr. Knopper. So, council, do you have any, no? Oh, not yet.
Just a reminder, the hearing of objection is to only hear from the public at this time, not really debate or anything. There'll be an opportunity at a future time for council to provide their insight.
Sorry about that. So it's my fault. There's no presentation. There were no objections. So question period?
No, Madam Chair, you have to ask the room first, if there's anybody in the room
Is
that
there
has...
anybody in the room that would like to ask a question or give an opinion on the bylaw? No? Okay. So...
We do have one person online, and I'll ask.
Okay.
For the person that is online tonight, if you want to comment to bylaw 25-02, please raise your hand virtually. I will ask one more time. If you have any comments to bylaw 25-02, please raise your hand. Seeing no hand raised, you can proceed.
Okay, thank you. There is no question period, correct? And the only thing left is to adjourn. So could I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Harland, and seconded by, I think that's Councillor Gomichel's hand back there. And so we are now, no? Oh, we have to vote, sorry. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded? Carried. Now we're closed, correct?
All right, let's call to order the regular council meeting here for the town of St. Andrews, February 3rd at 6:45 p.m. At the W.C. O'Neill Arena Complex Council Chambers. This meeting will be broadcasted through Zoom and live streamed as well on the Town of St. Andrews Facebook page. If anyone has any questions pertaining to tonight's agenda, you can submit it to p@townofstanders.ca. Quick recording of attendance. I see that all members of council are here with the exception of Councillor Blanchard. So thank you, Councillor Hurdle, for joining us virtually. And I do want to recognize that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Beskoto-Mogadi people. We're looking for approval, a mover for the agenda tonight as circulated. We've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Neal. Any changes to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Okay, and that is everybody, so the agenda has been carried. Disclosure of conflict of interest. Okay, I myself will be declaring a conflict of interest this evening. It'll be in regards to FA 250217. I'll recuse myself at that time, so Deputy Mayor, if you could proceed over the meeting, it'd be greatly appreciated. And let's jump right into presentations. I know that Mr. John Rocca is in attendance this evening. He's doing a presentation on a request for encroachment at 260 Water Street, which is the Argyle residences. So, Mr. Rocca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. You have a letter from me indicating how we got here and why we are here. And just briefly to summarize for those that do not have a copy of that letter, the civil work for this project was done by the engineering firm, unfortunately using the incorrect survey plan. And that problem was discovered after construction started, when the walls were done, completed, and they were supposed to be at a certain elevation to ensure that we were at grade with the sidewalk, and it was discovered that we were not. And that started the ball rolling internally and subsequently with staff and the building inspector to try and find a solution. And so the solution is not what I hoped for. It is that we represent it in our plans that the sidewalk and the entrance into the building will be a grade. And this is not possible unless we delay the project, redesign, and probably spend at least a couple of $100,000 to redo the work to get to elevation. So we're here to ask you to consider an alternative that is workable, that's been discussed with your staff. I believe it addresses needs in terms of maintenance of the sidewalk, The sidewalk will be reconstructed at our sole cost and expense. And so we're really asking for your help and your support. And we have here tonight on virtually both Spitfire, Dave McKay for the architectural firm, and Michael from the engineering firm that did the design, the civil work. And they'll be able to answer any questions that you may have about the design and what their proposal is, which is obviously beyond my technical knowledge. I can answer any other questions that you have for me, other than the technical ones dealing with the design of the sidewalk that we're proposing.
Council, any questions? Councilor Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Rocca. Can you help me understand the timeline in terms of how this happened? So I understand the engineering firm used the wrong set of drawings.
Survey.
Survey.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to the attention of the town, and it came to the attention of the building inspector. Is that correct?
First, it was discovered by Iron Maple, our contractor on site. So when they were building the walls, it had to be to a certain elevation.
Right.
And I believe it was to a fire hydrant that's nearby. And they discovered that it was not at the required elevation. So they sent a request to Spitfire saying, hey, we have a difference in elevation here. You know, what's the problem? You know, did we do something wrong, or is there another issue? Spitfire looked into it and came back and said the problem is that the survey contained wrong information. Then I got involved at that stage because we had commissioned the survey, and I was concerned as to why there would be a problem with the data contained within the survey. And we went back and forth with Spitfire, and it became obvious later that they were dealing with the civil engineering firm were dealing with a different survey plan rather than ours. Meanwhile, at the same time, the building inspector's been doing regular inspections. They also noticed that this was a problem, so they wrote to me about it. And I contacted Spitfire, obviously, saying we have a problem here. The town says that we need, at the very minimum, we need an encroachment agreement. And I kept saying, well, why would we need an encroachment agreement? We're not doing anything on the town's property. And eventually, I was told that, in fact, we were encroaching on the town's property, and that if we wanted to implement one of the options, then we needed the help and support of council. That's when we met with staff. They reviewed the various proposals, they critiqued them, and eventually there was one suggestion, which we have, the final one that's before you, that essentially works from an operational point of view, snow removal point of view, et cetera, but does impact the street.
Right. So at some point, did the building inspector tell you to halt?
No, they indicated that there was a problem, and that they usually tell you there's a problem, and if you don't address it, then of course we'll have to issue a stop work order. So, but by then we were at least 2 to 3 weeks already into trying to understand what the cause of the problem was and what the potential solutions were.
Okay. And I have one more question.
By all means.
So with this adjustment in terms of elevation, and I'm a social worker by training, this is not my area, so I will say that up front. But with the adjustment in terms of the elevation, so to me, when I look at the building, it looks like everything is that much higher. What was the completed height of the building, and will this change the when the structure is completed? Will the height of the building be any different?
No.
And how is that?
It does not impact the height, because the height is measured from the finished floor elevation, the 31, 32 meters height. So that is not impacted. It's the relationship between the building and the sidewalk that's impacted.
Okay.
And just, if I could, Your Worship, and to go by council, to help Councillor Harlan too, because that was something we knew council was concerned with. So the building inspector, through the RSC, had requested updated plans, I guess, to certify that, because that was a concern too, and they assured us that it was well within the bylaws, that the existing bylaws, to be able to maintain that. I don't know if the planning director wants to go on any further on that, but we have verified that through additional drawings.
Yeah, with this, if we had an 18-inch height increase, we looked at that in terms of its approval and whether or not that type of deviation could be tolerated within the zoning, and it could. So that wasn't our main concern. Our main concern was with this, whether we were going to issue a stop work order, was whether or not they could meet the barrier-free requirements, and that's where the cascading question of if they're going to be able to do that with this current elevation, then there comes their encroachment requirement. So definitely a stop work order is something we discussed, but we did not issue it because there was progress toward a solution, and other work was being done on the site not related to this as well. So if there wasn't a possible solution and we needed to get progress, then a stop work order would have been issued.
Thank you.
Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Rocca. I have a couple of things that have bothered me really along the way with this development. The first one is there's a group of us go for coffee every morning across the street from your building, and everybody at the table noticed that the height was above the sidewalk. And that really bothers me, that we as individuals can see this, and yet a whole plant of people working there did not. That bothers me greatly because we can sit and see it. And second thing that bothers me is that the building was totally approved without anything to council. We never even saw a photo of what the building was. As a council, I understand it met all the codes and bylaws without having to come to council for approval, but I think it would have been, in some respects, appropriate for us at least to have gotten a plan or a site or what it was going to look like, because everybody would ask me what the building is going to look like, and I didn't have anything to show them. So there's a few things that kind of concern me about this, and one of them was to be able to have this building created without any input from council, but now that there's a problem, you have to come to council for their input, and it doesn't sit well with me. I'm sorry, but it really doesn't sit well with me, because a building of this magnitude in our downtown historic core, it was just not seen that there was a problem. And now that there is a problem, we're here as a council to try to fix it. And I just think it's kind of a, I wouldn't say a slap in the face, but I think it's kind of a, it just doesn't sit well with me, because we as a council never had anything. We never saw anything. We were just told it was going to be built, and that was fine. And it met all the zoning bylaws, didn't need any council approval. But when you have a building the size of this coming into a small municipality, it would have been, I think, polite for council to have been involved, at least in some sort of a way, and at least be told what it was going to look like, what the color was going to be, etc. And now we're here as a council to clean it up. And it just doesn't sit well with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. I guess in response to that, if we want input on a building like this, it's up to us to change the bylaws in order to provide that. But I hear your point. It's not part of the project until there's a problem with no input early on. I do understand where you're coming from. I have a couple questions, and I'll go back to council. Just these are more for staff. So I just really want to make sure, since there's already been an error in this, that that on a busy summer day in St. Andrews, if we're jetting out into our encroachment, and it looks like it's quite extensive, that we do have enough room for a wheelchair to get by there. And I'm not just talking just the width of a wheelchair. I mean a wheelchair when someone else is walking by as well, where they don't have to wait for people to stop walking if it's busy. I just want to be really aware of that, since it appears like it's gone halfway across the sidewalk. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, we'll have to confirm that, because we do have concerns about the brickwork that's there, that they're not meant for walking on. So, well, as we get in, if council chooses to go to an encroachment agreement, there's two things. We probably ask for the bricks to be removed there, just for that, to provide extra stable walking conditions. And there's a light pole right in front of the building that probably should be removed, and staff are okay with that, as the facility, as you can see on the diagram, has lighting on the front, so it should light up the sidewalk as much as the light pole is, and that should provide adequate lighting. I don't think we got the final design between the width of the sidewalk and that final step, so that before we get into the final agreement, we'd get all that stuff from the engineers, and just to ensure that those types of things are taken care of, and then provide any type of recommendations from planning or staff and public works included, just to make sure that our normal services and safety of the public can be maintained.
And on that note, I'm sorry, I have a series of them. Again, they're more for staff. With that post there, now I'm hearing that it might be moved, obviously at the project's expense, not the taxpayers. Would the same concern be for the sidewalk plow that comes in through there, that it's a pretty thin area? Would it still fit between, I guess if the post is going, but the post and the encroachment?
Yeah, that was kind of our number one concern when we brought them, that we needed a sidewalk machine there. The only thing that, our recommendation that they're more worried about, they have the ramp there. It's a little hard to see it on the big screen. It's okay, Paul. But there's a step that goes up to the top of the ramp, and they're kind of concerned that the plow will come along in a bad storm and clip it, so we might ask for a railing even on the side, just so it's visible on a snowy day. Or, for that matter, we thought, me being one of them, somebody might be talking and having a coffee, walking down the street, and not see that first step by the ramp and face plant. So there's some modifications, if council's okay with this, that we'll discuss with the developer, but they're all minor in nature.
Okay, sorry, council, I have 5 questions. The next one would be, I'm going to just go through them all. Is it normal for encroachment agreements to be a concrete nature, or is it usually wood? Because I see like patio requests and they're wood structures, not something that's permanent, but keeping in mind, I don't know for a fact, but you've got some beautiful, shops in downtown with, I don't know if Serendipin Art has an encroachment on the front. I don't know if the Leather House goes past. I'm trying to picture it, but like they have entrances that you step up on with concrete. Is this a rare request to have a concrete encroachment, or because in my experience on time of town council, it's primarily been wood, which is more temporary in nature?
But that's the thing, it's temporary in nature, and some of them are removed when you think of some of the stuff in the downtown. I mean, the council can decide that there might be some building code stuff that we have to make sure that that's still okay. I can't speak to that, but of course the Bank of Nova Scotia is all concrete, and it's significantly higher than the one we're discussing. But as far as if you wanted wood, we could look at that and discuss it. But
I don't think it would look as good. I'm just wondering, because concrete is more permanent in nature is my only point on that one.
But that'd be the nature of the encroachment agreement. It would be
permanent.
Permanent.
And then I guess it's only 4 questions, because I can tie these together. So this doesn't just apply to this development, but this one jets out quite a bit further into the sidewalk. If someone was biking after dark and it jet out and they hit it and they flip their bike and landed on their face, or we got 1.5 feet snow and they can't see it because we haven't had the sidewalk plow and they trip over it, is the town liable for this, or is it what's the right answer there? Just because there's no rail at the front of this, and if you're biking along, it jets out so far, it really could be a hazard.
Well, that's why we're asking for a rail.
Okay.
I mean, the walkers, I mean, bikers are supposed to be on the road, to be honest. I know they aren't a lot of the time. But we are asking for a rail, at least on the side of the things, primarily for our sidewalk machine, but also, as we said before, somebody could be coming down the block and not paying attention and trip over it.
I think the rail would probably mitigate that a bit, but I guess it goes without saying that that's for every encroachment agreement. It's not just this one. It's just this one. The way that it's designed right now, you could see how someone could easily, in a winter storm or even biking, and I know they're not supposed to at night, but we all see it, and liability is not always what we want them to do. It's where they are, right? So I'll give you an example. We have trails that we have yellow bars that stick out, and people run into them, and we're liable, right? So it's just, because this jet's so far out, I could see the municipality being exposed to a little bit more risk when it comes to...
I guess, I'm not a lawyer, but from my experience, that probably both would be named in a lawsuit. It'd be primarily fall on the building owner, because it's their staircase, and that's why we're trying to help them find a warning system like a railing to prevent any of that happening. And then, the town itself would probably be named because they were on the public right away for a little bit. But it's significantly long, and the thing about this one, because I'm not saying it's a 12-inch rise, and so a 12-inch rise isn't quite as noticeable as whatever the Bank of Nova Scotia's is. I mean, it must be pretty near 36 inches, so it stands out. So that little riser before the 12 inches is really low. I don't know, it's probably only 6 inches down, I'm assuming. So that would be something that your normal vision probably wouldn't pick up unless you're looking down. So that's why we're just trying to find a way. And I mean, it could be just as simple that the proponent, and I'm not suggesting this now until we see what it looks like, but maybe put a plant or something on the corners in the summer just so you have something that stands out, that just to tell people that they should veer around it, just to really nice and high.
Thank you. Sorry, Council, for asking so many. I'll come back for a second round. Just want to make sure no other member of Council had any questions.
Your Worship,
Yeah.
may I please address the 2 points raised by the councillor?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll go to Councillor Bennett.
You had 2 points, councillors. The first one was that you and your friends having a cup of coffee across the street could see the difference in elevation. And obviously it is noticeable, but I can assure you from the timeline that I've given you is that the very day that the footings were in and the walls were up, our contractor notified Spitfire, we have an issue here. So there was no delay and no attempt to mislead. This is not a good solution for our building. The best solution was the one that we proposed, which was to be a grade. It's best for the town and best for the building. So that's the first point. On your second point, I apologize if no one told you about the building, but we were here, if you recall, in a proposal that was rejected, which had the underground parking. The materials that you see, the color scheme that you see is exactly the same as was discussed and brought to this council, and that the vast majority of the citizens said that they agreed with. If you recall, the first one had a brick exterior, and most people said, no, we don't want that, we want wood. So if you look at the plans for the previous one that was rejected by you, this follows that design. And I apologize if I should have brought it to your attention after it was completed again, but I don't think we had an obligation to bring it back because we were following what everybody wanted, that they wanted a building that complied, and they wanted an exterior that was wood with the material that, in fact, we have shown in our second attempt to try and get your approval.
We'll go to Councillor Bennett, then we'll do a second round, if that's okay, Councillor Heenan.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson and Council, and thank you, sir, and I really appreciate your input and answering the questions for us here tonight. First of all, I guess you should be commended for doing such a wonderful project in our community. I'm sure when it's all over, hopefully you'll be very pleased with your project that you've finished. We did talk about this last week. We had a meeting, and we did ask for drawings, and I thought we would get sketches today, and as well as drawings. And if we had the drawings, architectural drawings with how many inches it is between, the sidewalk and whatnot, I think that would answer a lot of the questions we have about how wide this is versus, and if it included the rails and everything, I think it would be a lot easier to make an easy decision on this if we had a complete set of drawings with everything the way that it's proposed to be, rather than just say, well, we want to put a pipe or a post or whatever in it. It'd be nice to see the completed project on paper. And other than that, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Any other councillor that hasn't spoken yet? Then I'll do a second round. Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. Again, thank you, Mr. Rocca. I'm not going to repeat my question, which originally was about the width of the sidewalk, other than to say if we could get those measurements at some point.
I believe that, excuse me for interrupting, Councilor, I believe that Michael or David can answer that question for you now.
That would be great.
Hi there, Dave from Spitfire. I do have a sketch I can certainly share with you guys. We had shared it preliminarily when we were with the city, or town, sorry, while we were kind of looking at our options. We're looking at approximately 2.3 meters from the bottom step to the back side of the curb is what we're looking at right now. Again, I can certainly...
Dave, do you have a visual available? I can give you the share screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you're good to share?
Okay, perfect. You guys able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Okay, so this would be a cross section through the stairs and the sidewalk. So we're showing the two risers, and then, like I said, about 2.3, 2.29 meters from the face of that bottom step to the back side of the curb. I know there's a comment about barrier-free path of travel, making sure that a wheelchair could get in there. The code calls out, I believe it's 920 millimeters for a barrier-free path of travel, so we're well over double that for access. So again, I can certainly share this this section so you guys can kind of look at it at your own time. But this is approximately what we'd be looking at with the required landing at the top with the ramp and then the two risers.
Sorry, just to clarify that comment. So double the code. Is that for the ramp or is that for the sidewalk? Just to clarify.
It's for like the barrier-free path of travel. There isn't a section in the code for things basically outside of the building. So when we're looking at the barrier-free path of travel within a building, that's what's listed in the code, and that's listed at, like I said, I believe it's 920 millimeters, so 0.9 meters of width as a minimum when we're talking about clearances in a straight path of travel.
But, Your Worship, just like you've shown on the ramp there, 1.22 meters is what's needed for the barrier-free access. So if you double that, it's 2.44 meters, and you can see that the red line is between the step and the thing, so he's just implying that it's twice the width that's needed to make for two wheelchairs to pass or such.
Yeah, for pedestrian and wheelchairs on the sidewalk itself, there's certainly more than enough space there. And we did also discuss on site about the snow clearing width, and I think we're over that as well, but I don't remember the exact width of what that was. I think it was around 6 feet. So we'd be over that as well.
Councilor Neal, I'll give you the follow-up.
So thank you very much for that. That basically led into my next point, which was going to be, again, that is 2.29 meters, including the brick paving stones that line the sidewalk now. So again, if we had to remove those, and again, maybe Mr. Henderson can comment on this, but for me, typically sidewalks don't usually go right to the end of the curb. There's usually some sort of inherent buffer, I'll call it, whether it is just paving stones or a grass strip or something, which to me presents a bit of a safety aspect to it. So in this case, it looks to me like we're left with about 1.4 meters if we go to the paving stones, which does that still would fall within the code, but still a little tight maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the existing concrete portion of the sidewalk is.
So, one way, sorry, if I may, Councillor, I guess another way, I understand what you're saying, and if that's the way to go, we also thought about, if you remember in Town Hall, we replaced the red brick with those better paving walking stones that are much tighter, and so that's another option we could look at to give that physical, visual difference between the curb and the thing, but it's still manageable to walk on. People still walk on the bricks, it's just they're not great to walk on. They're a bit of a tripping hazard, so we'd like to remove them over the time.
They do typically create a bit of a break between, say, the sidewalk and cars driving by.
And there's even, and I guess there's, because we say it's also the space where people, if they're not on the side, or if they're still on the concrete, somebody should be able to open up a normal car door and not hit someone, but.
Okay, thank you. Just one more comment, I guess, or question, and maybe this is for Mr. Rocca, but could you give us an idea of what other options were looked at to mitigate this issue, as opposed to just this ramp?
Excuse me. Well, the very first one was what is involved to meet the original plans and specifications. And that's what I referred to, the point that it probably means a cost of about $200,000 because you have to take out what it's already there, lower the floor, so, and probably about a month in terms of impact on construction schedule. So that was the first one, and I believe they went to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, through a couple of suggestions that your staff rejected as not being acceptable. And eventually we met on site. There was a site meeting, and at that site meeting, various items were discussed to address snow removal, except all the issues that we've been talking about here. And that seemed to be the best compromise to work with. And as you've heard, it's not final. It's still, it's still a work in progress, but it wasn't much use to try and refine it to the nth degree until we knew whether we had your support or not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Hurdle.
Thank you. Just doing a volume check. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sound wonderful.
Okay.
Like a podcaster.
Thanks. Don't necessarily expect there to be a response to this, but I just wanted to bring it up that, and again, I know it's this is a policy and a bylaw for the City of Toronto and in Ontario, but the Provincial Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the AODA, direct that sidewalks be at least 1.5 meters. And what I'm looking at here is that the sidewalk component in the spec that was just shared was 1.38 meters. So a little bit less than what the Ontarians with Disabilities Act would require. Again, different province. However, the City of Toronto, since I think 2012, have mandated that city sidewalks be at least 2.1 meters, which is considerably more than what we see here. Again, Toronto, obviously a lot more density, but I would say in a peak of our summertime, it's comparable downtown. So I just wanted to address that if we are looking at doing this, what we see there just wouldn't be sufficient for foot traffic, whether it meets local policy or not. It still wouldn't be necessarily what I'd like to see. So we have to consider pushing into that brick area to expand the sidewalk. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurl. Anyone else that has it? Then I'll do a second round there. Councillor Gubichel.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you, Mr. Rocca, for coming down. Just to respond to something that my colleague had said, I don't think it's fair to berate Mr. Rocca, given that he followed the rules and the issues that came up are issues that we have with our secondary municipal plan. I think he followed the rules, so that's not really a fair comment. Although I too would have liked to have a little bit more involvement. I'm very excited that, I meant to ask, when will the building be done? I should probably know that, but.
The contractor says the end of August. I'm
The end of
pushing for
August.
the end of July.
Is there like a sunset clause on that, or just like, are there, in the building agreements and things, is there a date that it needs to be finished by, or?
No, it's an agreed construction schedule, and obviously, we're very good in our profession of projecting once you're enclosed. The problem is until you get to being closed. So we've lost a couple of weeks because of weather.
Right.
And
In other projects that you've done, is it common to have a term, like a finishing date, or?
Yes.
It's
Yes,
a
'cause
common
we-
practice?
Yes, because we have to tell our tenants,
Right.
residential tenants, when they can move in, because some of them have homes to sell, others have notices to give to landlords. So we reach a stage, and typically that stage is once we know that once the building is enclosed. As I said earlier, we're pretty good at projecting as an industry how long it'll take to complete. So in about a month, we'll be at that stage, because the floors on top of the parking structure are being panelized. So that will go up very quickly once we do the structural slab, which hopefully the structural slab will be done in the next week, 2 weeks.
Well, I'm very appreciative of the drawings. I think it does solve the problem, even though it may be a little bit tight. And looking forward to this building, helping to revitalize that portion of the downtown and increasing the density of people living in beautiful downtown St. Andrews. So thank you, Mr. Rocca.
Thank you,
Councillor Michelle. I'll do the second round now. I'll go to Councillor Harlan, then I'll go to Councillor Heenan, just because she had her hand first.
Thank you. I just need clarification. So, Mayor Henderson, when you were talking about the extension of the railing, are you talking about it or proposing that it potentially be all along the top of the?
Well, technically, I wasn't proposing anything. It's what staff told me. But my concern was if there's no railing there and there's at night or snowfall, you just trip across it because
Right.
if you go down the normal line
I
of our
know.
sidewalk, right, which could happen.
Yeah.
So staff, what they advise is they're trying to get basically on the end of it. There would be one that you do not see in this picture that would block it, so it would stand out.
Right, but, and, so that bottom, I just don't see the benefit. I just see the hazard of that bottom step or ledge and a tremendous potential hazard at the end. So if that bottom step was to be removed and a rail was to be extended all along the top, is that a possibility? Similar to the bank, except at a much lower.
Yeah, it's a possibility, and it's council's decision. It's better for the retail space that's on the bottom floor, that people can kind of access it from just a couple of steps as they're walking by. It's just one of those things. It might make the proponent was hoping not to have to extend a rail along the whole front of it, because it does take away from the visual acuity of the building. That's the right word, acuity. Word of the day.
That's a very big word.
Thanks. Don't take that in accounting school. I don't think. And so, you know, I understand the safety issues, but I think it can just be all addressed by, on that lower step, that each end of it, we just have a handrail that goes up, so that, you know, so people would know that something is there. So that means somebody'd have to forget once they pass the handrail that it's there and then crawl into it, but it would solve the issue of the snow moving equipment. They'd know it was there and then understand between the two rails it's there, and then the proponent's staff would have to, you know, shovel out the rest a little bit. But there's not a lot to be able to do about people that might walk past one of the railings and then forget about it and trip over it. But again, hopefully there's people coming up and down on it enough that it should be noticeable.
I just think about summer days when our downtown is so busy. I definitely think we have to do something about the bricks on the curbside, but I just really see that as being a hazard.
Well,
That bottom step.
Council, we can talk to the proponent later, too. We could even, sometimes you'll see in buildings where they'll have handrails at a couple of spots, besides the ends. There might be 2 more that are, for every quarter of the length of it, there's there. Sometimes there's just people who don't need a ramp, but need that little extra push to get up with some mobility issues or a bad knee day or whatever. So we can talk to them if that's a real concern. And, for them, it's a relatively easy fix. It isn't ideal, but I think it's better than running a railing the whole length of the front of the building.
Yes, I think the railings are required, necessary for safety, and it's obviously in our best interest to make sure that nobody does get hurt there. And I think that railings are the potential solution to that problem.
Yeah, I don't think we'll need to reinvent the wheel. I think we could take best practices that are in buildings, all across North America and find a design that mitigates the concern. Because that does jump out. It looks really good, but there's some risk the way that it's designed today, in my opinion, for the taxpayer of St. Andrews. Councillor Heenan, thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Rocca, first off, I would like to say that when you put your first proposal in, I took a lot of heat because I was pro your first submission to council, and I took a lot of heat from that. So I am very pleased to say that the building is there. So I need to put that right up front. The only thing that I have to say is I treasure downtown very much in this town. And like you used the word earlier tonight that you were not obligated to send us anything because it met all the codes. Well, you may not be obligated, sir, but I do think it could have been a courtesy.
And I agree with you on that, Councillor.
Yes.
And I apologize. I never received a call from anyone asking for information, for plans, be it from around this table or anywhere else, but I should have taken the leadership to make sure that you did have it.
And you did mention, sir, that, you're going to do the same color scheme as before. And that's perfect, because we did debate that, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so this is a problem when you're a town councillor and you're downtown and someone says to you, what color is it going to be, Lee? I don't know. No one knew anything about it till you put the sign up. And I just find, like, as I say, it's our own, it's, as the mayor said, it's our own, our own restrictions that didn't allow this to happen. But I do think with the relationship that was with council on the first go, we could have continued it through. And that's the only point I make, because as I say, I'm very proud of this building and it's going to be a great asset for downtown. So I want everybody to know that. But it's just, I have a few things that just don't sit well, and that's it.
Well, I think it's fair criticism.
Thank you.
We'll make sure that the plans and renderings are all available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rocca. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Rocca. I will say that I do agree about some of the concerns that were expressed tonight, but I also do agree that this design versus the original, even before you were involved with the project, it is a far nicer building than the original, in my opinion, of the original ones. And I'll say that kind of a gravel pit with the caution tape, the way it's been the last few years, this will be a welcome, I guess you could say, extension to a commercial district, which we have a very limited footprint in this community. So the fact that the first floor will be commercial, if you recall the original proposal, not necessarily from Mr. Rocca, but it was actually all residential. Not that we don't need that, but when you have a limited commercial district, it's important to extend it. And it certainly will make that end of town busier, because a lot of people think that once you get past the dollar store, the downtown ends, and you've got some great businesses down there like Drew Haven and things like that. So to extend our commercial district, there is some advantages of that. So thank you for coming in. Council will have some discussions, and we should be able to get back to you very shortly. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, Council. Let's jump ahead here. We're getting into the staff reports. Doesn't seem right. Didn't we do that last month?
Your Worship,
It's just-
there's a
it's
set
the
of minutes.
Oh, there is a staff report, though.
Approval of minutes on page 13, Your Worship.
Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry, Council. It's just one set of minutes. That's why I skipped it, right? So it's the minutes of the 25/01/20 regular council meeting on Monday, January 20th at 6:30 p.m. Could I have a mover for those minutes? Okay, Deputy Mayor Akaji, seconded by Councillor Heenan. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That is none. That has been carried. Now we'll get into the staff reports.
Council, since it's only been 3 weeks since our last
I was
meeting.
going to say, it doesn't feel like it's been...
I know, I had to
Yeah.
check. I almost avoided it, but I know everybody likes to hear my
You like
voice
writing
at least
them.
once.
Yeah.
You know,
And the
like to
clerk's-
pat myself on the back.
And
No,
the clerk's got to keep him on track here.
That's
you know?
right. This meeting's report will be relatively brief. Our town relies on many volunteers, not only for the various organizations and activities, but also to be on municipal boards and committees. But for you tonight are motions to add individuals to the Heritage Board, Age Friendly Committee, and the PAC, Public Planning Advisory Committee, sorry. One bylaw being forwarded for consideration tonight has been discussed by council for several months. The bylaw regulating the licensing of peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks. I'll have to work on shortening that. The current version of the peddler's permit is decades old, as it was enacted in 1985. The primary purpose of updating this is to address food trucks. In the past, we were very restrictive on them, as many councils felt that they offered unfair competition to the business owners who invested in the town. However, views have evolved over the years, and there are now avenues for these units to operate in town, although still with policies in place to limit their numbers and locations within the greater municipality. Staff are also bringing forward 2 recommendations for the purchase of vehicles as authorized under the 2025 general capital budget. Both came within the budget, but will take several months to receive once ordered. Administration and services. This Wednesday night, February 5th, staff will be conducting a combined public consultation session on the proposed changes to the vehicular bylaw, as well as an opportunity to review a proposed parking lot across from Langmaid Park near the Van Horn Trailhead and Water Street, which is across from Langmaid Park. Oh, you said that already, sorry. It goes from 6 to 8 p.m., but it is only a drop-in session. If you are unable to attend that evening, feel free to reach out to either the clerk or I, and we'll be glad to discuss it further. One of the common issues we have heard from residents in Bayside and Shamcook is a perception that the roads and highways maintained by the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure should be brought to a higher standard regarding ongoing maintenance. The mayor and staff expressed those concerns, and a meeting was set up with the regional engineer. There are really 2 key takeaways. The first is that if you have a complaint on these roads, you should contact the 1-800 number or send an email to the service center, who can track it and, if needed, issue a work order. And I will say, feel free to contact Town Hall, and we'll be happy to submit that in your request. The second is to acknowledge that there is capital refurbishment that is needed throughout the district, and they submit plans on an annual basis of known problem areas. However, due to budgetary constraints, many of those are put off to an unknown time in the future. We hope to set up a meeting with our newest councillors and the same representatives so they can voice their concerns and get an opportunity to understand the challenges of the department. As of writing of this report, which was last week, the ladder truck for the fire department was in Moncton and being prepared for delivery today, which I'm happy to say it was received. If all went well, some of you might have seen it, the new apparatus in the yard, as the members will be receiving training on it, and you'll probably see it over the next 2 or 3 days through the day if you're driving up and down the street, as they will be working on it with the vendors. It has been a long time coming, but it is a reflection of the supply chain issues, as well as the number of fire trucks being ordered continuously. Chief Terrio and former Chief Jeff Cross went out to do a final inspection of our vehicle while it was still at the manufacturing facility. They were blown away by the size of the plant and the number of fire trucks being worked on at the same time, 300. There's This is one of 2 facilities for Pierce's that services North America, but they are not the only provider. Last fall, it was noted that the water level at Shamrock Lake was quite low, as it was 7 inches below the height of the dam. As of this week, it is now 3 inches above, which is a bit historically lower than our records show, but back to an appropriate volume. There is no financial report for this meeting, as staff work to finalize the financial reports for the auditors, adding another level of accuracy. We do plan on bringing it forward at the next regular council session. Despite winter making an appearance, there is still lots to do in town, as both the main ice surface and the curling club are bustling with activity, and other events like pickleball, the Film Society, the Winter Warmer Festival, which happened this past weekend, and the Spin Drifters offer a variety of activities to beat the winter blues. Don't have it right now, but feel free to check out our recreation page on Facebook or call in, because we try to list just about everything we can do within our community to keep everyone busy and to avoid the winter blues. Respectfully committed, Chris Beer, Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you very much. Council, any question regarding the staff report or financials? Okay, seeing none, I will, there's no financials attached, but we can still ask. Like for example, there's a lot of small snow coming right now, and we did do a reduction based on previous years. So I'm starting to wonder if this continues, if we've got concerns on budget, because every morning I wake up on my backyard pond, I have to shovel it, and I'm thinking about the salt trucks and the plows. It's been a busy year so far.
Operations manager like to say this is the worst type because it's what they call salt eaters. We're hardly enough to plow, but you can't fight it with a plow. You just got to keep dropping layers. For sure, it's going to take up a big part of our budget, but we did put a lot towards the operating reserve fund that we just left it in our savings account for the time being, and if it's needed later in the year, council can bring it out to offset those extra expenses.
Thank you. Motion to accept the staff reports as presented. I've got Councillor Harlan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ackergy. All in favor of accepting the staff reports, please signify by saying aye. Thank you very much. That has been accepted. We are jumping into the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. The first folder will be planning and community development. So we just had a presentation from Mr. Rocca. It looks like we want to have a little bit of a discussion at this point on that. Is that safe to say? So, Council, over to you. I'm hearing that there's still some concerns. I think you'd like to see a redesign, is my assumption on that one, of something that might make sure that there's not as much liability for the town of St. Andrews with the current design. Is that what I heard, or I just don't want to speak too much? Mr. Spear.
Yeah, Council, I understand. And really, if you can give us direction, primarily that if you're willing to live with the encroachment, we'll work with them to come up with an agreement and a better design. If you want to provide us a little more input on design, but we didn't get too deep into the weeds until we knew that you were either in favor of the encroachment agreement. So if you could kind of let us know if you're in favor of that first, and then tell us some of the things we heard earlier we've made notes of. But if you have other stuff you'd like to say, let us know, and we can work with the proponent to bring a plan, and hopefully, honestly, we'd like to get this looked after by the next meeting if possible, just so everyone can move forward.
Sure. Quick question is, will this follow an encroachment policy, and will there be an annual fee charged for this encroachment on town land?
It's up to council, but just many of them do.
Council, over to you, but to me this isn't an affordable building. It's a for-profit building that's using public property now. So I think a formal encroachment conditions would be appropriate in this particular case, especially the fact that it was an error made on the side of the developer and nothing of the town. Over to you, though. Councillor Ware.
Yes, I've been listening to this with great interest, not saying anything. I guess my word is disappointment is we as a council, we're not architects, we're not engineers. We're sitting here trying to make a decision on a construction project. I don't think there's anybody at the table qualified to do so. And I think it's unfair to ask council and staff to make those decisions. And it's just a feeling I've had for a long while sitting at this table. And, our two staff members are expected to be engineers and project managers, and they take it all on willingly. I just don't think it's the way to properly run a municipal unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ware. Any other member of council? If not, just a quick show of hands if you'd like to see a redesign on, oh, Councillor Neal, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Henderson. My initial feeling is that there should be some level of compensation from the developer. I mean, again, this is a developer's mistake. They're asking us to encroach on our land. It's not ideal. I'm sure we can develop something there that works. But again, are we potentially opening up a bit of can of worms here for other encroachment agreements along Water Street? And it's not that I would not love every building on Water Street to be fully accessible. We hear about it quite often, and the number one reason that I typically hear as to why some of our existing buildings cannot become accessible is because they would have to encroach on our sidewalk. So is there the potential here where we potentially lose our sidewalks?
I guess lose our sidewalks may be a little strong. It'll reduce the width of them for sure. But we do have various encroachment agreements. Market Square is a prime example. You know, through the summer we have the places that put the decks out on the sidewalks, and you know, there's others within the town. I want to say the Lobster Bay Eatery, but now Will and Water originally got an encroachment agreement to do their deck, and so we do have a history of them. It's infrequent, that's for sure, and you kind of have to handle it by a case-by-case basis. And I guess the hope was with this one that, as opposed to the historic buildings, which didn't worry about accessibility, they built them up with steps, and because of their size, there's not a lot to be able to do. With this one, we're hoping to be able to keep it at flush, which would be ideal, and then move forward. But you know, the proponent explained what happened, and so it's up to council to let us know if you're okay with assisting them by, you know, giving up some of our property, and or forever. Let's be honest, this building will likely outlive all of us and probably our children. You know, be there for 100 years plus. So it is a permanent request, and maybe we have to look at actually selling it. Just be as easy as anything, but that's totally up to you. You know, if it's a permanent placement, you might as well just work out a sale of some sort and call it a day, if council so wishes. You know, it's back to you on that.
Well, that was sort of what I was leading towards. Yeah. And again, with some of these other encroachment agreements that already exist, is there any annual fee, any compensation that comes along with those at the moment?
Yes, there is. I mean, depending, and this is a little bit different situation, because even some of the ones like the Will and Water, which again was Lobster Bay Eatery at the time, and Kevin Simmons and Market Square, they've all got kind of semi-permanent structures, meaning they can be picked up and moved if the council in the future ever needed them, needed that space. But this is a permanent structure moving forward, so it probably would bring a higher premium, I'm assuming. We'll work at it and try to figure out what it is.
I think that's, again, where I kind of tend to lead, I think. Again, this is the developer's responsibility. I don't think that the mitigation of it should fall to the citizens of St. Andrews, which essentially is what we're being asked of, is to give up some of the sidewalk space. The other comment on that, again, if we were able to, again, whether it's through the development agreement or however we do it, if we actually end up selling that parcel of land to them, or a portion of that land, would that then alleviate any of the liability issues that we've raised?
Possibly, but I mean, in litigation, the town's going to be called into it 99% of the time. But in reality, our defense would be if that was poorly constructed and someone tripped on the steps, it would likely fall back onto the building owner and not the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you.
Fair points. If you kind of grant the ramp on this one, anyone that wants one in the future can just build what they want. We have to figure it out, right? Like, not saying we have to, but it's kind of what the solution is if you get them in a bind, they'll go ahead with it, right? And that's kind of what it feels like. So it's a fair point, Councillor Neal. There should be a consequence for the mistake, to your point. Councillor, Mr. Spear, want to answer that? I'll go to Councillor.
Yeah,
Noonan.
just maybe if council feels strongly about that, and I mean, in most cases, because this was a new build, we're in a little more control. But if any of our current buildings came in to ask for an encroachment to make them more accessible, I think council would be willing. So it's just, we feel that because the original plan didn't work out so well, that there's a little more pressure on council. But if there was a grant that came along and the accessibility people, Inclusion New Brunswick, I think it's called, Ability New Brunswick, sorry, came in and recommended that would be an ideal solution, that, accessible ramps are built for as many premises as possible. I mean, we even had a grand scheme of wondering if we could build a ramp just the width of the block type of thing, I'm not saying we're ever going to, but you know what I mean? If that many buildings are going to do it, I think council would probably embrace that as a way to improve. It's just this one got a little mucked up because of the original plan. And so now we're left in a dilemma to try to figure out how to support it, if at all.
A question, we may not be able to do this, but is there ever circumstances where in order to gain approval of one thing, it would give a council, I want to say, more teeth in controlling a development, meaning that we're coming on tougher economic times, everyone's assuming. This project seems like it could sit there for 5 years. I don't know what the completion is. Is there any way to say that in order to get this, then there's these other terms and conditions that are put on the building to make sure that the downtown is productive? I'm just not saying we need to. I'm just wondering if there is that opportunity, since what I've clearly heard from council is you've had no input into this. To me,
So the quick question, it's a negotiation at this part.
Okay.
It really is. It's council's land. And so you could, I'm not recommending it, I'm not saying you shouldn't either, but you could just say, no, we want to keep the sidewalk, you figure it out on your own footprint and move forward. But the proponent's been working with us trying to find a solution, and it's not unheard of in St. Andrews to try to build ramps in places. It's just, it wasn't the ideal solution from the get-go and what we hoped would have happened, for sure.
perfect. And I will say that the person that would have the most to lose if it did take an extended period of time would be the developer themselves, right? But just for council, I did hear that the lack of input into the process was a bit of a, I guess you could say, a sore spot. But again, it is our own bylaws and secondary municipal plan. Councillor Heenan had a hand, then I'll go to, yep, absolutely.
Sorry, Councillor Heenan, I'll just be 2 seconds. I just wanted to go back and say, what I meant to say too was, if council feels strongly about this, we could come up with a policy about new builds and stuff that we put right into our plans, and I don't know if you can work it into any of our bylaws. We can ask Alex about that at a later date, where it says anything freshly being built along wherever. We can say the Front Street, or we could say anywhere in town has to have accessibility built in immediately. In these certain areas, it has to be at grade, and that a ramp or type of accessory will be tolerated, and then that would lock it forward.
I think making sure that since I don't know what I want to call it, weak provincial regulation, but if you're allowed to build a public building nowadays and not make it accessible, shame on policy. So if we have an ability to ensure that that's done, that is a moral obligation that all of us have, I believe, in this community. So absolutely, and I would say that I've heard time and time again from this council, and it'll be part of obviously our zoning bylaw and municipal plan, but I've heard that when it comes to the Front Street, there is an extra level of scrutiny that we all hear from the public that does need to be taken into consideration. And new builds, everybody just assumes we approve them. They don't understand how a new build can happen in our downtown and we have no say in it. People do not understand that. They constantly do. So I would want council consensus on that, but let's put it in a parking lot for a zoning conversation. We don't have to decide that today. But when it comes to accessibility, I won't pick on a building, but there was a building built a couple years ago, and the fact that it's not accessible and it's a public building, I don't understand how that happened. And if we have an ability to stop that in the future, we have to stop that.
So with the matter of accessibility, it is a requirement when it is a new build. One of the things that can happen, though, if you're doing a retrofit of an existing structure that wasn't ever adapted, so in the case of, I think I know which structure you're referring to.
It had a foundation, right?
It had a foundation, in which case it was built above that grade. But I actually think this is something that it is worthwhile to talk about with the zoning bylaws, so that you're not getting in a situation where you have a lot of ramps, because that also can take away from, as we talked about, the acuity of the building, good word, but to take away a little bit of that accessibility from the sidewalk, which is what makes downtown so special, to have those storefront windows just right there, and be able to have that equal access between people in wheelchairs and people walkers and people with who are standing. That I think is really important, and I think going forward, if we did have this in the zoning bylaw and or secondary municipal plan as a design criteria, it's something that could be looked at for sure.
Thank you for that. Councillor Heenan, you've been waiting patiently again.
No problem, Your Worship. Just a couple of things. First off, I sit on this council and I sit on another council. The other council is for the church, and it was denied a wheelchair ramp at the front because it was too close to the sidewalk. And with the ramp being installed, it would still have been 10 feet from the sidewalk. And so I sit here and I hear that we're going to put this encroachment on a sidewalk. So that kind of doesn't sit well with me, number one. Number two, we do know that we're going to do the encroachment. I think that will be the case. It's just what form it takes. I personally feel that I like the idea of selling it. It makes it more permanent, and it also could reduce our liability if something should happen on the encroached land. Thank you.
Okay. How many would prefer an encroachment agreement over selling it, though? Traditionally, we haven't sold part of our sidewalk is the only thing, right? It would be an anomaly, for sure. I do believe it would mitigate liability, to your point, because an injury would happen on their land versus ours, but I don't know that for a fact. Mr. Spear.
And I guess in sober second thought, you bring a good point. So again, when you in our business, you got to not think about your term. You don't think about the life of the staff that'll be there. You're thinking about forever, right? And there might be an opportunity. I said that building could last 100 years. Well, if it lasts 100 years and they demolish it, maybe at that time council says, no, you can't have that anymore.
Fair.
So maybe we'll have to talk to our lawyer how to word that, but maybe an annual lease is the best, or some type of upfront fee, but saying that upon whatever, upon demolition, we'll have to work out the wording, that it goes back to council, or that it won't, or goes back to the town. We can figure that out and talk to the proponent what's suitable to them and figure it all out.
That's a fair comment. If a tragedy ever happened where it needed to be reconstructed or something like that, then yeah, if you sell the land, it's permanent. That is good advice. So that makes sense. All right, anyone else? Otherwise, we will jump on. It seems like, Mr. Spear, do you feel like you have direction on that one?
I think I have clear direction, council, but everyone's in favor of allowing an encroachment. That's all we want for tonight, and we'll work. We've heard some of your key points from the presentation.
What I'm hearing is they will consider a different design, but I don't think they're necessarily approving it right now. Is that safe to say, council?
But we'll say you approve it in principle, though, as opposed to a hard no.
Yeah, and then obviously I think council would like to see what the taxpayer benefits by giving up the land as well, right? As far as the encroachment, right?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to jump to Councilor Harlan.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. So this is reference number PCD 250205, and it's the appointment of members to the Mental Wellness Committee. The background is as follows. The Town of St. Andrews established a Mental Wellness Committee in the fall of 2024. As part of their terms of reference, members shall be appointed to the committee by council For year one, all members have asked for a one-year term to start and establish the committee. Reappointments will be brought forward in 2026. The motion reads as follows: that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews appoints the following members to the Mental Wellness Committee for a one-year term: Angela Keach, Kaylee Dunfield, Heather Heath, Elizabeth Neve, Matthew Dixon, Devin Lord, Councillor Annette Harland, Councillor Steve Hurdle. Sorry. Let's try that again. Councillors.
That would be a very intelligent counselor.
Councillor Steve Neal and Councillor Jamie Hurdle. And I so move.
Thank you. That might be my favorite blooper of the year. Could I have a seconder for that? Councillor Heenan? Discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that has been carried. The next motion, Councillor Harland.
This is reference number PCD 250203, and the subject is appointment of members to the Planning Advisory Committee. The background is as follows. The Town of St. Andrews Planning Advisory Committee members are due to renew their terms of office on the committee. Only one member is not seeking a renewal of a term on PAC. Members not seeking reappointment include Jeff Cross. We would like to thank Mr. Cross for his service on the Planning Advisory Committee and his role of Vice Chair for the past 2 years. His work on the committee should be commended. Currently, the PAC has one vacant seat and will be calling on public members to fill the vacancy. So the action, the first motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the resignation of Jeff Cross to the Planning Advisory Committee, and I so move.
Seconder, please. I've got Councillor Neal. Discussion? Do you want to just reject it, or?
Yeah, please.
Don't give him an option?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Heenan.
I would just like to say I had the privilege of working with Mr. Cross when I did my term on PAC, and I've got to tell you, a great member of the committee, and a big thank you to him. Thank you.
Perfect. I feel like we'll still see lots of Mr. Cross in the community, though. All right. All in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, you sure, guys? Girls? Carried. Okay. We are jumping ahead of this. Oh, sorry. The second motion on this one.
The second motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the reappointment of the following Planning Advisory Committee members with the following term limits: Jill Stewart, 3 years; Jeremiah Kerr, 3 years; Kevin Simmons, 2 years; Dwight Ingalls, 1 year; John Tanner, 2 years; and myself, Councillor Harland, until the end of the council term.
Perfect.
And I so move.
And a seconder? Got Councillor Gumashell. Discussion on that one. So I think Mr. Tanner is the only new individual in that. Is that correct?
No.
He was already on?
He's been on.
Okay, perfect. Shows you how much I talk to PAC, which is why it is that way. Okay, all in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. I was going to say how great it is to have Mr. Tanner with his experience.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to recuse
Mr. Chair,
myself.
just so you're aware, just so council understands and who's chairing and vice chairing. So, Ms. Jill Stewart will be continuing as chair of the PAC, and Mr. Jeremiah Kerr will be the vice chair. So, from the Ward of Bayside. We did, right there.
We just have to wait a few minutes till the mayor leaves the room. Councillor Heenan, you'll have to read mine because I'm the mayor for right now.
Am I all right now, Your Worship?
You're all right now.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. This is reference number FA 250217, bylaw number 22-02, Code of Conduct Investigation Report. There was a complaint brought forward from the public against a member of council in 2023. As per bylaw number 22-02, Council Code of Conduct, an independent workplace investigator was brought in to review and ascertain the validity of the complaint. The conclusion was, quote, the complaint be dismissed in its entirety, unquote. The motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the conclusion of the investigative report by Mr. Jody Carr, dated September the 9th, 2024, and I so move it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. We need a seconder, please. Councillor Harland. Any more discussion about this? Yes, Mr. Spear?
I was just going to say, the nature of the report, there shouldn't be much discussion that we should have go to closed session if there's anything within the report you want to say, just due to the nature of it being an employment and legal matter.
Thank you for that advice. Therefore, we will put it to the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Contrary minded? It's carried. And you can get the mayor back, please. Yoo-hoo, sir, come back.
All right, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Reference number PWPS 250205, the subject tender number TSA 2025-01 and TSA 2025-02, purchase of vehicles. And the background reads, as part of the capital budget, Council authorized a purchase of tandem dump truck for $450,000 and a 3/4 ton truck at $105,000. Both tenders were issued on January 8th and closed on January 28th, 2025. For the tandem dump truck, we had only one proponent, which was expected as they are the primary vendor in Atlantic Canada for commercial size plows, wings, and sanders. They did include a note on their tender that if the tariffs are implemented as threatened, they may not be able to accept the order. For the 3/4 ton, we had two proponents. First was Downey Ford in St. Stephen, and the second was Downey Ford in St. John. We had other dealers take the tenders, but did not follow up with a submission for consideration. It needs to be noted that we are purchasing the snowplow and sander for this unit separately. The expected price of the truck was slightly under budget. So the motion for the first part reads that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews awards tender TSA 2025-01, new 2024-2025 3/4 ton 4x4 regular cab truck to Downey Ford of St. Stephen in the amount of $66,966,000 plus HST, and I so move.
Seconder, please. We've got Deputy Mayor Akaji. Discussion? Okay. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye. That's everybody been carried. Next motion.
And the second motion before us is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews awards tender TSA 2025-02, purchase of tandem plow dump truck to Applied Pressure Inc. of St. John, New Brunswick for $429,950, excuse me, plus HST, and I so move.
And once again, we're looking for a seconder. I've got Councillor Harlan winning that one. And discussion on this one. Okay. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. So during the whole process, we've talked about this truck several times, but we never really debated the whole issue of this truck. And I certainly concur with town. They say they need a truck. We should buy a truck. However, the idea that we're buying a full-size tandem dump truck with plow and wing blade to service the downtown core, the St. Andrews Ward, seems like a lot of overkill for the nature of this town. I know now our trucks, I think, are all 3500s and 5500 plow trucks. In most smaller towns, most smaller municipalities, on the high side go to like a 7500, like an F7500 Ford, single axle plow truck. And the reason why I bring this up is, as I drive around town and some of the roads are pretty narrow and there's a lot of tight corners, when we get this new truck, if this goes ahead and purchase it, a full-size tandem dump truck, and then you put a big wing blade on and a 11-foot straight plow on the front to try to make these corners in around town, it'll be quite an experience for the operator who's driving it. And even though I do acknowledge that I do think we should purchase a new truck, I do believe that the tandem truck is complete overkill for our streets that you're going to serve. if this truck is something that you plan on in the future to, do the 127 or maybe the Glebe and the Harkness, whatever, that would be an ideal truck for that situation. But for the streets downtown, I do think that a full-size tandem dump truck with the plows on it is going to be a very hard truck to use in St. Andrews Ward. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Spear, do you care to comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. So I appreciate the councillor's comments. One of the things, the plow and stuff itself are less of an issue. It's not much bigger than what we normally have. But there's a lot of efficiencies with the size of the dump itself that we're going to be able to hold 3 or 4 times the amount of material, whatever it is. And so sometimes when they're doing, water main breaks, they're just continuously running trucks back and forth where they could go over, get one load of the tandem and take care of it. Another issue that should be a money saver is our current trucks are too small to go pick up asphalt. And right now we're contracting that out with a local company. And so this large truck would allow us to send our own driver to the plant, whether it's in Oak Bay or St. John, and bring that down and to do the work and save us money that way. I guess the third point is they do require a specialized license to drive this, and 3 of our drivers already have that, so they are used to driving vehicles that size. 2 of them are firefighters that drive fire trucks already, so they're used to bigger vehicles. So for our main arteries, which these are used on, they're plenty good. We have smaller trucks that do what we call the shorts, which are like Edward Street, and King would be a main one, the big one would do, but all the other streets that are heading up towards the hill between Water and Prince of Wales are a little smaller truck. So it'll be less tight in that part of the plat, but our main avenues, including Reed and Mowat, are serviced by, like right now, the 5-ton truck, we call it. And so I've got confidence in the drivers and things that they do that. And even with the snow removal, again, the last 2 or 3 years is not a good indicator, but when you get like a 30-centimeter storm, it's another problem. You're just running trucks all the time. But, right now it takes 3 or 4 loads to do, or better to do, 1 block in town. This truck could probably narrow it down to, well, it'll take more than 3 or 4. It's probably 7 to 10 of our smaller trucks that are loaded up by the blowers and sent down. We can narrow that down to a couple of loads per block and speed up the snow removal process too, which is important because they get up early to try to beat traffic. So if they could just run the blowers into the truck and just run the block, it's a benefit for that operation as well.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Spear.
Councillor Heenan.
And plus the fact is, if I'm not mistaken, you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Spear, but we also would use it out to the Clark Road, for an example, which is part like 127, and we'd also use it out towards Bayside as well. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct. We're responsible for the designated highway, they call it. So it's right, Clark Road and in.
And I will say that Councillor Bennett's correct. It doesn't go out to Shamcook and Bayside, and you don't make a purchase based on that. But who knows what the future bodes? We may have to start looking at all of ours that way. As municipal reform 2.0 comes out, which I'm sure it could happen. We'll see how it all shakes down. But again, you wouldn't make a purchase guessing what's going to happen there. So they're valid points for sure, and I'm glad that you asked those questions just for the extra check on it. Anyone else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. We are jumping ahead now to Councillor Hurdle, I believe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And this is in reference to EBC 250101. The subject is the bylaw number 25-02, a bylaw to regulate peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks. First reading. And the background is the bylaw number 25-02, a bylaw to regulate peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks in the town of St. Andrews, is being presented to replace bylaw number 75, which has been in place since 1985. This bylaw has provisions to address and regulate these business opportunities in the community. Please see the attached document for a copy of the bylaw. The following bylaw processes have taken place. The public hearing of objections was February the 3rd, 2025. The first reading, second reading, third and final reading are yet to come. If council is satisfied with the current draft of bylaw number 25-02 and with the public feedback, council can move to first reading. And the motion before us is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews grants leave for the first reading to bylaw number 25-02, a bylaw to regulate peddlers, buskers, transient traders, and food trucks in the Town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Hurdle. Seconder? Okay, Councillor Gumashell with that one. Discussion? Quick question, just since I did have a prior obligation. Was anyone at the hearing of objections? Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay, all in favor of going to first reading, please signify by saying aye. All right, that's everybody. So this is bylaw number 25-02, a bylaw regulating the licensing of peddlers, buskers, and transient traders in the town of St. Andrews. I will read it by title. 1 is definitions. 2 is geographical area. 3 is peddler's license. 4 is bylaw exemptions for peddler's license. 5 is busking license. 6 is transient trader licenses. 7 is food trucks and food vending vehicles. 8 is general. 9 is revoking of license. 10 is enforcement. And 11 is repeal provision. It was read the first time, the 3rd day of February 2025. And we're on now to, I believe, Councillor Ware.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reference number EBC 250205, St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce funding request for 2025. Background, there is a letter attached, but the town of St. Andrews has received 2 requests from the St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce for the 2025 year. $2,000 request for funding to support the purchase of the 2025 town maps, and either $250, $500, or $1,000 sponsorship of the business gala for the 2025 hosted April 10th. In 2024, the town supported the chamber with $2,000 for the maps and was a $1,000 platinum sponsor of the business gala. These funds were drawn from the tourism accommodation levy. To note, they are soliciting many businesses to be a sponsor of the business gala. They've also solicited Explore St. Andrews for the same request the town has received for maps and the gala. Please see the attached documents for more details on the requests.
Do you want to just hold off the motion? We'll talk about the amount before we read it twice. Does that make sense?
Or I can put an amount in and...
Oh, if you prefer to do that, either or. Yeah.
I was just about to say, I'll put in the amount we gave last year. The motion being that the council of the town of St. Andrews supports the request for funds by the St. Andrews Chamber of Commerce for $2,000 towards the 2025 town maps and $1,000 sponsorship for the 2025 business gala. Funds will be withdrawn from the tourism accommodation levy for these initiatives. I so move, and the amounts are based on last year's donations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ware. Seconder? I've got Councillor Gumashell. Now we're open for discussion. Do we know if Explore St. Andrews, how much they've committed to this, to either of these causes?
Not at this time.
Okay, Council, so you could just approve based on the motion the last time, or we could reach out to them. It's really your pleasure. I will say that out of the tourism accommodation levy, I don't think the chamber asked for too much out of it, and they do a heavy amount of work with tourism in the case of that. So any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. That has been carried. And we're going back to Councillor Hurdle with his really good microphone.
Now I'm all like self-conscious. Is it like too loud or something? I don't know.
No, it's just crystal clear. Like, you sound like a pilot.
This is in reference to EBC 250206, and the subject is the appointment of members to the Heritage Board. And the background is, as per bylaw number 24-04, Heritage Conservation Bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, members must be appointed to the board. Under the new bylaw, there are currently no members appointed. Council did appoint members to a board to create the bylaw, but they must be reappointed under the new bylaw. Additionally, council must appoint a planner to the heritage to be the heritage officer. Note, we will need to do a call out for 2 members of the board to fill the vacancies. And the motion before us is that the council of the town of St. Andrews appoint Alexander Gopin, senior planner, as the heritage officer under bylaw number 24-04, Heritage Conservation Bylaw for the town of St. Andrews, and I so move.
And a seconder, please. I've got Councillor Bennett. Discussion? All in favor of appointing Mr. Gopin, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect, and perfect person for that role, so thank you to Mr. Gopin. Next motion.
Next motion is that the council of the town of St. Andrews appoint the following persons to the Heritage Board under bylaw number 24-04, Heritage Conservation Bylaw for the town of St. Andrews. First, Councillor Jamie Hurdle, myself, until the end of council term. Councillor Annette Harland until the end of council term. James Janot, a 3-year term. Dylan Smith, 2-year term. John Kelly, 2-year term. Monica Cole, 3-year term. Cindy Kohler, 2-year term, and I so move.
Thank you. Seconder for that one. It was pretty close. What do you think, Deputy Mayor or Councillor Neal? What does everyone think? Give it to Councillor Neal. Councillor Neal, who's entered as the seconder. Discussion on this one. Okay, all in favor?
Council, so you understand, the members of the board are appointed based on criteria. So the 2 members that are not returning, we have to find members that are going to have to fit under that criteria. So just so you're aware, it's not just putting somebody on the board; they have to meet a certain criteria under the bylaw.
Understood.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody that has been carried. Appreciate all of them raising their hand, obviously guiding through the process and continuing on their journey as well. We are going to Councillor Gumashel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reference number RE 250203, dated January 27, 2025, submitted by myself, and the subject is appointments to the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee. And the background reads, the town of St. Andrews has received 2 resignations from the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee and a request to appoint 2 new members to the committee. Resignations from Louise McFarland and Sandy Morgan. These 2 members have been a part of the committee going on 5 years and a part of the original team to get the age-friendly designation for the town. Their dedication to the community is commended and thanked. The 2 new appointees, Shelley Hughes for a period of 2 years and Lisa Eldridge also for a period of 2 years. All other members are still in good standing with their appointment terms from council. So the motion reads that the council of the town of St. Andrews accepts the resignations of Louise McFarland and Sandy Morgan from the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee. And I would make that motion, Your Worship.
And a seconder. I've got Councillor Harland. And discussion?
Louise McFarland's name is spelled wrong. It should be an E instead of a D at the end of her name.
McFarland, yeah.
McFarland.
Thank you for that. We'll make sure the minutes reflect that. Okay, we got a mover and a seconder. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I would like to thank them both. In particular, Sandy Morgan was, I think, one of the original 2 that really got this off the ground. She spent a great deal of time. Is that correct? Yeah, she's, and again, Louise's contributions are greatly appreciated too, but Sandy was, I remember very early on with this whole process, she was heavily involved. So thank you to them both. Next motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next motion is that the council of the town of St. Andrews appoints Shelley Hughes and Lisa Eldridge for 2-year terms to the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, and I would make that motion.
And a seconder. Got Councillor Heenan just beat Bennett. I think Bennett knew that too, eh? Yeah. It's amazing what keeps me entertained at these moments. Okay, all in favor, please signify. Oh, any comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
They've been at it. Thank you both to Shelley and Lisa. And next one, Councillor Gumashel.
Thank you, Worship. The last motion this evening is reference number RE 250204, dated January 28th, submitted by myself, and the subject is appointment of member to the Trail Advisory Committee. And the background reads, the town of St. Andrews was notified that Dr. David Johnson has stepped down as president of SORTI, and Ann Mackay has been elected as the new president. With this change, Mrs. Mackay will be representing SORTI on the Trail Advisory Committee and will need to be appointed. We wish to thank Dr. David Johnson for all of his hard work and commitment to the community as part of the Trail Advisory Committee and efforts to build accessible trails for all to enjoy. So the motion is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the resignation of Dr. David Johnson from the Trail Advisory Committee, and I would make that motion.
And a seconder for that motion would be Councillor Bennett by a mile on that one. Discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And again, Dr. David Johnson has been involved with the trails. Councillor Grimshaw, you could speak, but for a very long time.
Okay. Dr. Johnson has worked tirelessly on trails. It's become his vocation in his retirement. Every day he's working away in the background trying to enhance our community with accessible trails, and I think we owe him a great debt of gratitude for all the things he's been able to accomplish in the last decade.
Thank you. Well said. Appreciate that, Councillor Grimshaw. Next motion.
The last motion this evening then is that the Council of the Town of St. Andrews accepts the appointment of Ann Mackay to the Trail Advisory Committee for a term of 2 years, and I would also make that motion.
And a seconder for that one. Councillor Harland. Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's everybody. She has been appointed. Hopefully in the side she can help Councillor Grimshaw with his edges on the ice. She's a good skating coach.
Oh boy, here we go.
Had to throw that out there, eh? Saw him play the 9-year-olds. He looked a little rusty. Okay, nothing under new business. Question period. Is there anyone in the full audience that would like to ask a question this evening? I feel like we'll get them later. Anyone online and anything submitted? Oh, perfect, we're off. And I just want to confirm that we no reason to go to closed session. Okay. Councillors' comments. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that's given me lots of bags for the food bank, but they still need more. So if you have any extra bags home, deliver them to the town office. They could certainly use them, especially times are getting tougher and those boxes are getting heavier, I think, for me to lift. So if at all possible, it'd be great. And the second thing is, as I mentioned before, March 15th, we will be doing a rattle and drum workshop. I haven't got all the details worked out, but I will have it soon. But what I'm asking for is if there's anybody that would like to donate to that day, that would be great, because drums, as you know, are very expensive. So if there's a possibility, then you could come to the town office. We do have the Truth and Reconciliation Fund we could put it in, and this is education and value thing that workshop that many people have asked me for, but it's just a very expensive to do the drums. Not so much the rattles, but the drums are very expensive. And I'm fortunate to know Greg Mansfield, and he is coming down for the whole day. So I would ask that if you can assist us, that would be great. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Ware.
Yes, I suspect all of you followed to a certain degree President Trump declaring economic war on us. I didn't get much sleep over the weekend, but I think as a council and as a town, we should be giving consideration to what we can do to protect ourselves in the coming years. I think all of you know my feelings about those great fields out to Bayside that are sitting there going to waste, which should be producing food. And we've also got to take a look at the NIMBYism that exists in the area. There are opportunities to bring manufacturing jobs to the area. Not only is it good for the economy, it looks like it would be good for the country. And, you know, we have to be more aware of it, and we have to take a more proactive approach on it. There's going to be monies available when the new government comes in. I don't think it's if, I think it's when. And, you know, the opportunity to get people involved in business and make ourselves just a bit more self-reliant. We take great pride as Canadians of being self-reliant, but I don't think we've proved it as well as we could in the last few decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just on that, the first point of that, then perhaps maybe staff could look at what's happening in other jurisdictions and bring it forward at the next staff meeting, and we could have a discussion if we should be bringing something forward, because I do know of other municipalities that are looking at things as well, and certainly share your concerns on what this means for Canadians from coast to coast and the impacts of it. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Any other member?
I know I'm not a member of council, but
By all means, you're allowed to speak. You've sat here through it all, helped us a little bit. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's important to realize that today is the start of the Recreation Master Plan survey. So the public did receive a mail out about this last week. Please go online to our website. The link's available. It's on there. It's on our Facebook posts. Everything's there for you to fill out. If not, we've got paper copies available at Town Hall, the arena here, the Wellness Center, the Youth Center, and Bayside Community Hall. So there are paper copies available. If you don't want to do it online, you can pick it up. We were really pushing for, we'd like 200 to 300 surveys. This is going to set the tone for the next 10 years of recreation in our community. So your input is greatly appreciated, and please keep notice for when open houses are hosted in March that you'll have more opportunities to participate at that point. But please get out there and fill out the survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, just for myself, I do want to comment on the Code of Conduct investigation report. I can't speak too much because it is a closed session matter. I just want the public to be aware that it was an unfounded complaint that came into the municipality, and I think the taxpayers of St. Andrews have a right to know that it cost a significant amount of money to this municipality to investigate it, and that's what I'll leave it at right now. It's very unfortunate that it happened, and a lot of resources went into that. On that, ironically, I do want to wish my son Tristan a happy 10th birthday. Sorry, Dad had to leave early to be at town council, but I hope it was a good one, buddy, so I'll leave it at that. Could I have a motion to adjourn? I've got Deputy Mayor Actually, seconded by Councillor Bennett. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.